Welcome to the Vital Moments podcast. My name is David, and if you're joining for the first time, we're glad that you're listening. Ron and I are going to spend some time wrapping up a conversation from a Sunday morning at Vitalpoint Church across 3 sites. It was kind of a fun, chaotic, hectic, funny morning across the life of the church. Do you
I'm
want to
proud
call
of our team.
it?
I'm
Yeah.
proud of our team. Like,
Mhm.
honestly, technical difficulties with the message in Exeter and Clinton and
Mhm.
both communities just, I think we've become masters at pivoting. And
Yeah, we definitely have.
yeah, and I can't say it enough. I'm proud of the teams up there.
Mhm.
Um, I'm even proud of the team here in Poplar Hill. We had some adjustments, not technical adjustments, but there were some moments in our service here that God was doing some powerful things. And
Cool.
to watch our community, I had a nice chat with 2 new couples that were visiting from somewhere else, from another town, and they spoke so highly of our teams and
Mhm.
how they felt welcomed. And people don't underestimate the power of greeting people in the parking lot into the
Mhm.
building to make them feel valued. They may never remember what we teach on, Dave, but they will remember how they feel when
Mhm.
they came to our spaces. And for me, I think it was, and
Mhm.
overall, it was a big, big win for us as a church. And especially since, Exeter and Clinton
Mhm.
didn't get the video talk. So, but you stepped up, dude. You had to, during the course package in Exeter, you're in your office reading the script that I wrote for this talk, and then you gave it. And I've been getting
Mhm.
messages from people. So
That's cool.
you killed it, dude. Way to go.
Yeah, and that's where we're gonna talk about that today. The conversation in our Jesus Said What series from
Yeah.
the Sermon on the Mount, and it was a spicy meatball. This one,
Spicy meatball.
it was a
Yeah.
spicy meatball,
Yep.
and we talked about lust. And across all 3 sites, obviously Clinton, they didn't get the message live in the room from the video. They ended up having a long, like a longer worship set or time of
Yeah.
singing in the chorus
Yeah.
package, which
Yeah.
was so cool. Um,
Yep.
but this was one where all 3 sites identified they've never heard a church talk on this passage, Matthew chapter 5,
Hmm.
verses 27 to 30, correct?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. That's
27
right.
to 30. And where do you want to start with this conversation? Because it is, like I said, it's a spicy one. And
Well, well, I think, David, one of the things we've realized that in this series is there is a sense of heaviness. There's no question
mm,
about it. We've been talking about it as site leaders across our 3 sites. We've been talking in our meetings each week that there is a heaviness, but I think this is a heaviness that's appropriate
yeah.
in a way that forces us to look at the deeper part of our lives.
Mm,
We
cool.
spend so much time in the shallows. And I
Mhm.
believe it's John Eldridge that calls it the shallows of our lives, where where schedules happen, run our kids around, do
Mhm.
this, we mow the lawn, change the oil in the car.
Mhm.
But Jesus hits these things over the Sermon on the Mount that literally uh, disrupt our patterns and
Mhm.
force us to look at the deeper part of who we are.
Mhm.
And man, oh man, Jesus hits it right.
Mhm.
So right on the head of the nail in the
Mhm.
head. What's that phrase? Yeah, you know what I mean.
Hit the
It's
head.
so incredible.
Yeah.
And I think what people fail to realize is that what Jesus is actually doing in this past Sunday, and what he's going to do in this coming week when we teach on marriage and divorce, is he's actually grounding us in a biblical perspective on marriage and
Mhm.
God's original design for marriage. And
Yeah.
he's talking about protecting it. This lust and adultery, you've heard that it is said, do not commit adultery. But even if you look at a woman with lustful intent, you've
Yeah.
committed adultery with her in your heart. Like, Jesus is like literally taking all this surface level realities and going boom right
Yeah.
into the heart of who
Mhm.
we are. And I believe that we're living in a time where Jesus needs to disrupt us again with
Mhm.
these type of truths. And I've been so excited about
Mhm.
how, I mean, it's tough, Dave. You had to teach us one on lust and adultery. I mean, you had a really tough situation to find yourself in. But what I've found for me is the excitement of stepping into these conversations, because I believe that in our church we've built enough credibility and trust with our community that the tone of this
Mm-hmm.
truth, like I got a text from someone in the church yesterday afternoon that said, "This is what I love about our church is we're not afraid to get into the tough areas with boldness, but we do it with such grace."
Yeah.
And and I think that that's really cool. Like that's an important
Mm-hmm.
part.
It is huge. And let's spend the next few moments breaking down the idea of what Jesus means around lust, the lustful desires, looking, even if you look with intent.
Yeah,
Let's break that down because people are sitting in rooms right now talking about this.
yeah. Some of
Um,
our connect groups, right?
yeah, and we need to break this down to bring more clarity, but also a sense of ease.
Well, first of all, I mean, I ended in Poplar Hill with this idea at the end of the talk that if you struggle with lust, please don't feel like you're a bad person.
Hmm.
And I believe that part of the reason why we need people to hear that up front is because there's a lot of messaging around desire, feelings, and it's become culturally accepted that our desire and our feelings are the ultimate truth. We define it ourselves. So therefore, we get pulled into some of the realities of the disordered desires that we talk about, which is basically the dysfunction of self, which leads to sin. And so
Yeah.
for us, what we're trying to do is take this moment and see what Jesus says about this. And I like the two words look and lust. The
Hmm.
word look is the gaze upon something, because I don't believe that Jesus is saying that you cannot look at something and admire the beauty. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that
yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's
Hmm.
there's a piece of it where you can admire someone or something from a place of beauty,
Hmm.
um, without it becoming an object to be consumed. And
Hmm.
our culture has really created that lustful objectivity of an individual to be something that is conquered or to have for our
Hmm.
own personal satisfaction. And so Jesus is breaking that down and taking it to the depth of understanding that, yeah, sure, outwardly you can say, yeah, I've never had sex
Hmm.
with anyone other than my spouse, but you've had lustful thoughts for the person in cubicle 6.
Yeah.
And Jesus would
Hmm.
say you've already committed adultery with that person in your heart. So it's the protection, right? And I think that's what Jesus is trying to do is protect our hearts and protect our marriages.
Hmm.
And with the breaking down of marriage in our culture, which we're going to go after and look at what Jesus teaches about marriage this coming weekend, is realizing that it starts with the look, and then it becomes the
Hmm.
unhealthy fantasies, the imagination, the desires,
Hmm.
and that kind of unpacks from there. So
You had three really great points, and you kind of joked
sure,
about it on our online service. I watched it this morning again. Um, that you had three great points on how to deal with this, begin the process of healing.
yeah, yeah,
That I thought was really, really great. Um, do you want to just go over them quickly, the three?
yeah. The first one is being aware of the intake of
Hmm.
sexual
Of sexual
content.
content, yeah.
That is one area that if you're struggling with lust, you need to limit that
Hmm.
ability, right? And it's almost like I heard a friend of mine say, he was in AA. He said it's like an alcoholic trying to overcome the abuse of alcohol sitting at a bar with a beer in front of them. Like that's not the place to try to deal with
Yeah.
it. And I think if you're consistently and regular, and I'm not talking about you're watching a movie and all of a sudden there's an inappropriate scene. What I'm talking about is the consistency, the
Mm-hmm.
intentionality of going to that particular material
Yeah.
content. So for me, it's like if I'm watching a show and I'm really liking the show and it's got, all of a sudden it's got inappropriate scenes, I can just fast forward, right? I don't need to see
Hmm.
this. Um, and I think that that's a piece of it that's critical. What was the second one? The second one was um, a willingness to confess
Yeah.
to someone, and this. And you and I have been talking a lot about a healthy church as a confessing church,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that we need to get to that place where we're willing to confess and own that. To get it out in the open takes the edges off of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one was dying to self. It's a
Mm-hmm.
daily dying to our desires. And
Yeah. Acknowledging that there's a brokenness within you, um,
yeah,
or
yeah,
there's a disordered self where your feelings are all over the place, and just
hmm,
identifying and acknowledging, okay, God, like my ways can lead to destruction, but I'm choosing to crucify those thoughts, crucify that
yeah,
life, and follow Jesus's ways of life.
yeah,
Because he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life.
yeah,
He actually fulfills what God says in Old Testament. God says,
yeah,
I am
yeah,
the Lord.
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
Jesus, he finishes that statement, says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So as a follower of Jesus, we are to say, you know what, every day, Jesus, I want more of you. I want to be
yeah,
like you. Give me your eyes, your heart,
yeah.
these things.
Yeah, because dying to self, David, and I don't know if it was on the video online or if I don't know if I added it in. I can never remember these things.
Mm-hmm.
When we are dying to self, what we are doing is gaining self-control,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
which
So
is the fruit of the spirit.
right, which is the ninth part of the fruit of the spirit, which is self-control.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not in the character development of self-control, of dying to ourselves, then we will be out of control, and it will diminish the work that God is doing in our lives. And I think that this is the other piece of it that we sometimes fail to realize, is that God is desiring to do a work in us. What we're doing when we're giving into our lustful desires in this particular teachings of Jesus is we're doing the damage. God wants to restore your marriage. He wants to bring health to your marriage. He wants to bring vibrancy and strength to your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are permitting lustful, intentional desires to penetrate your heart and your soul, then you are doing damage to your marriage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so those unfiltered, untamed, untethered imaginations, fantasies of the person in cubicle 6 is literally
Mm-hmm.
standing in the way of being able to develop. I had some interesting texts from people, and one person just acknowledged that they have witnessed this in their circle. I'm going to be super coded because I don't want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just they've seen how this pattern has destroyed a marriage, or is in the process of destroying a marriage. And it's that giving into. And David, I'm sure you hit this too in Exeter when you taught this live. Um, but the absolute worst thing that we can tell people is be true to yourself.
Yeah.
And even in Poplar Hill, when I said that in the first service, I'm pretty sure I heard someone say thank you.
Mm.
Because true to ourselves, which self are we true to?
Yeah.
Because it's changing all the time
Mm-hmm.
because of our disordered desires. And I kind of joked in Poplar Hill, like, what's true self? Like the self that I want to run over somebody or chew somebody
Mm-hmm.
out, which, I mean, it's so dangerous, but
It is dangerous, but like what you opened up with today was, you said we've gained a trust right now where we can step into a moment and speak
yeah,
boldly, but speak boldly that's saturated and soaked in humility,
yeah,
right? And in all honesty, the conversations that we're having as a church right now on Sunday mornings in connect groups is because we love so much.
yeah,
Like Jesus loved people, so we love people, and we try
yeah,
our best
yeah,
to bring the scriptures, the truth that Jesus spoke from Old Testament to New, the
yeah,
writers, to bring the clarity to our world that we need, right? God, Jesus says, like, go and make disciples of all nations. That means bring
yeah,
my word to them, bring the good news of who I am.
yeah,
And guess what? It's
yeah,
going to be these moments where you have to step into a conversation and talk about the disordered desire of trying to conquer another human being, seeing them as meat, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
that's a relevant thing to do.
Like
Like,
almost like animals, right? There's that.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
animals
There,
animals multiply because there's a conquering thing.
Yeah.
Like I remember doing some studies on lions for some weird reason. I don't know why. It's just coming to me, but it was to conquer their their partner. Like a
Yeah.
male conquers a female lion to
Hmm.
conquer them, to show dominance.
Right.
But and it's just such an interesting thing
Right.
that we act like animals a lot of the time. And I got a moment to speak into um parents in the room of it kind of just hit where I was just like, whoa,
Mm.
like how do parents step into a moment and disciple their daughters to understand their identity doesn't come from a teenage boy and how they look and how a teenage boy looks at them.
Right.
No, like it's time for parents to step in and say, no, your identity, if you're a follower of Jesus, comes from Jesus, how he sees you.
Yeah.
And then even just step into the moment and allow parents to understand, like if you have a teenage boy, teach them and disciple them on how to love people for their character, and the beauty of how God's designed them within their talents and gifts, and fall in
Mm.
love that way with people.
Mm.
And it's just an interesting moment right now because we've talked about this behind the scenes, that Hollywood has over sexualized everything,
Oh, sure.
and
Yeah.
Hollywood
Yeah.
has really run amok with how we see people. It's basically porn on Instagram now if you follow the wrong accounts.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had to unfollow a few.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
have to protect
Yeah.
yourself, and that's that dying
Uh,
to self. And
Let me step into this because as we continue to deal with heavier, more pointed topics that are disrupting our cultural norms, I believe what's critical for us as the teaching team is to be uh, formed by the presence of God. So
hmm,
the more time that we as teachers spend with God in the presence of God, the weightiness of the truth is not on our shoulders. It's
hmm,
coming through our time with the Father. And I've been thinking a lot about this just even in this coming weekend. And I've been thinking about just how I need to be spending as much equal time just quiet before the Father as we step into these, because they're not our words. They're not our teachings. It's Jesus' teachings. And
hmm,
our responsibility is to make sure it's kind of like the Moses thing. Like Moses,
hmm,
God, unless you go with us, we're not going, right? I think it's
hmm,
Exodus 33. We've been talking a lot about that, but it's just been a really, really
hmm,
important for us. So did we
hmm.
get any emails? We did get an email, didn't we?
We did, but we're way over time.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry,
yeah.
anonymous email person.
Yeah, I think what we need to end off this time of conversation is just to remind our connect groups and connect group leaders that we're praying for them.
Mm,
Um, they are the frontline shepherds of our community. They are sitting
yeah,
in rooms with people that are beginning to confess, being able to lay hands and pray for people and with people, and
yeah.
walk in the journey as people walk with Jesus. So if you are
Mm,
listening to this, your Connect group leader, we love you so much. We're thankful for you. And if you're part of a Connect group, we love you and we're so thankful that you're doing life in community and you're bringing light into the darkness of our lives that the enemy
mm.
tries to destroy, steal, kill, and destroy. And we're saying, no, no, no. This is a time for light to come into my life and give me healing and peace that only Jesus Christ can. So I think that's a good way to just end off this conversation and allow the heaviness to be heavy, but speak life and truth into those moments.
It's a heaviness that lifts up. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a
It's
great
a
way to
weird.
say it. Yeah,
It's
it's
a weird
weird,
dynamic.
but it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Okay.
great.
Amazing. Thanks, Ron. Thanks to everyone listening. Share it with a friend.
Or watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Share it with a friend, comment, do whatever you got to do. And we're just so excited that people are leaning into these conversations. Okay. Peace out.
Peace.